Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dad BBQ, and today we are going to do some amazing pizza, but not on the Big Joe, that's right, on the Joe Jr. Now you might have seen some of my other pizza videos before where I show you how to cook pizza on the Kamado Joe with and without the DoJoe accessory, and we already did a head-to-head. I'll go ahead and put a link below if you haven't seen that. I don't want to spoil the winner. It was close, but there was definitely a winner. Family voted for it without any second guessing. But we've never tried a pizza on the Joe Jr. before, and after the last couple weeks where I was cooking on it exclusively for a period of time, I have a whole newfound appreciation for the versatility and utility of the Joe Jr. Again, I'll put a link down below if you haven't seen that video to get a sense for everything that we are able to cook on the Joe Jr. I was pretty impressed. And I think we're gonna be really impressed with how it performs here on pizza. And the reason is, as some of you guys have pointed out, is what makes a great pizza on the Kamado Joe is that the ceramics, if you let them soak in that heat, they act as a bit of a broiler, and you cook the bottom and the top of your pizza at the same time, not just directional heat coming up like you would get in your oven. And so since the Joe Jr. has a really short distance from the top of the ceramic to where the grid is, it might even have an advantage over its bigger brothers. So let me show you that difference with a measuring tape in terms of to the top of the vent cap. And I'll also point out how we need to set up the Joe Jr. a little bit differently than you would for a normal indirect cook if you're familiar with it, as to why we need to change that up. So come a little closer, we'll measure it up, and then I'll bring you over here and I'll show you the unique setup that we're gonna use for our pizza. Okay, so here we are on our Big Joe. Just to show you again, we've got the grid on the top position of our divide and conquer rack. So I'm just gonna put this tape measure down until I hit grid, which is happening about 14¼ inches to the top of the vent cap. So that's where our grid is. Let's go compare that to the Joe Jr. Okay, so here we are at the Junior. And again, you can see just in the normal position, the grid is installed as it would be for an indirect cook. And let's go ahead and see where this hits. Just over 8 inches. That looks like not quite 8¼ just a little bit under. So versus the Big Joe was up here. So we're gonna gain about 6½ inches or so of having the ceramic that much closer to our pizza, and I think that's just going to really help bring some radiant heat and broil our toppings. So let me show you now how we need to change our setup for, I think, a great pizza on the Joe Jr. Okay, so let me show you how we're going to set up our Kamado Joe Jr. to pull off the perfect pizza. So one of the challenges with the normal indirect setup is that our heat deflector stone sits way too close to the charcoal fire. And so that's not going to allow enough heat to come up and get the heat that we want in the top of the ceramic to have that great broiler effect. Plus, the distance between the stone and this grid I just measured is just over 3 and a bit inches. And while that's great if you want something like a spatchcock chicken and you want some clearance from the hot stone to not burn your food, when we do a pizza, we actually want a much closer distance of the heat deflector from the pizza stone. So there's just a slight air gap between the two. So let me show you how we're gonna fix this and modify our setup to pull off the perfect pizza. First, let's go ahead and remove our cooking grid and pull out our indirect cooking rack. So I'm going to take out our stone. I'm going to put the rack back in, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to install our pizza stone on top where it just nestles down in underneath the grid area. I'm going to add the grid, and I'll show you why. The pizza stone would absolutely fit on top of these posts. But what I'm worried about is if I go to slide the pizza peel, that this moves and falls off, or a pizza moves and cracks something. So to stop that, what I'm going to do is install our cooking grid as we normally would. Just like so. And then I'm going to install our pizza stone on top of that. So there'll just be the slightest air gap between the heat deflector and the pizza stone, but plenty of space for that hot air to get up and come into our dome for broiling our pizza. Let's go ahead and close that. Alright, so that is our setup for the Kamado Joe Jr. As you can see, we've got lots of space between our charcoal basket and our deflector stone, a small space between our deflector stone and our pizza stone, and then we don't have a ton of space between our pizza and our ceramic, which I think is going to give us an amazing convection roasted broiling effect for our pizza. I'm not going to record making the dough since I'm using the exact same one in a previous video, so I'll put that link below if you're curious how to make this recipe. It's an hour ahead of time you can make it. It's really good for the amount of time and effort that it takes. But we also have a great 24-hour sourdough recipe. Let me know if you'd like to see pizza using that in the comments below. Be more than happy to eat pizza again for you guys, as well as show you a different recipe than one I've already shared. But today was a beautiful day, and last minute we decided, wouldn't it be great to do some pizza? And wouldn't it be great to answer your questions of, can we cook an amazing pizza on the Kamado Joe Jr.? So that's what today is all about, is just to answer that question, if the Junior can pull off an amazing pizza like its bigger brothers. I'll rejoin you a little bit later on when it's time to fire up our Joe Jr. and get the pizzas on the road. All right, nighttime is the right time. So let's fire up our Kamado Joe Jr. So to get some heat in the dome, what I'm gonna do is add some charcoal, light our fire, and I'm not gonna have any of the other ceramics, including the pizza stone in it, till I see at least about 400 degrees. And all that's gonna do is shorten the amount of time that's gonna take to get some heat in our upper ceramics. I don't wanna wait till I see inferno mode heat and then add cold ceramics right on top of that fire, as we risk potentially cracking them and as they try to expand too quickly. But 350, 400 degrees has always been safe, so that's what I'm going to aim for today. So we're going to go ahead, remove our pizza stone, our grid, and our deflector, add some charcoal, fire it up, wait till we see 400 degrees, and then we'll add everything back in and let that temperature continue to climb, and then we'll be ready to throw on our pies. I'll take you fast forward while we get everything built. Alright, our Kamado Joe Jr. has just come up to about 400 degrees, and so I want to go ahead and get our ceramics in place so they can start to warm up with the rest of the grill. But when I was touching the outside of the dome earlier without gloves, I can definitely feel it starting to get heat soaked and trap all that amazing radiant heat in, which is going to help broil our pizzas. Now, as you might see here as I do a close-up shot, we're able to get away with a little bit more charcoal than what I would normally use in the Joe Jr. But by switching the plate from the lower position to the upper position, we get great airflow up and around it. We no longer have really a hat just sitting on top of our firebox. So I'm able to get away with a little bit of extra charcoal, which is going to give me the BTU that we need to make sure that we don't run out of fuel for our pizza. Looking in there, it's going to be no problem. I probably overestimated it. Let's go ahead and add in our heat deflectors. Okay, so now that we've added in our deflector, our grid, and our pizza stone, I'm gonna let the temperature continue to climb until I see about 600 degrees. I don't think I wanna go too much higher than that, as the pizza stone doesn't have a lot of clearance around the sides. And so what I think that'll do is it'll trap a lot of heat, and it might be tempted to burn the sides of our crust if we were to go something like 800-900 degrees. I might not be able to move it quickly. We've got 3 pizzas lined up, so if we want to add a little bit more heat, we can go ahead and adjust for the next ones. But I'm thinking about 600 degrees is not only great for the dough hydration and sugar content that we have where it won't burn, I also think it'll work great for this setup. Okay, since I last saw you, a small setback. As I was just opening the dome, heard a pop, and our inexpensive Pampered Chef pizza stone shattered. into 3 pieces. So I will not be providing a link to that stone down below for you to check out, since 600 degrees apparently a little bit too much for our thin 13-inch pizza stone. I wanted to get a thicker one, like the one that comes with the DoJoe or other ones that I've bought before that I've never had a problem at high temperatures, even things like 800, 900 degrees. But this is the one that we normally use inside, and it fit, and I thought, how amazing is that? But 600 was too much. So anyways, I still think it will work for our pizza cook today before being disposed of in the garbage, or at least that's the plan, so we're gonna try. Let's go ahead and throw on our first pizza. So we have a bacon and pepperoni pizza for the kids. We have a spicy salami pizza for the wife and I, as well as a margarita pizza for the whole family to dip into. So the first one we're gonna do is the kids. Since they're inside, they're hungry, let's go ahead and get our pizza on. Okay, see you in a couple minutes. Alright, so as you might have saw in fast forward, our pizzas look really good. I went ahead and started to slow down the temperature. After we had our stone crack, I didn't want any more exploding ceramics. Plus, with those cracks, heat was coming up through. So not the perfect pizza cook by any means. They still look really good. So let's dig in and find out how our Joe Jr. pizza first attempt went for a taste. Zoom in, hopefully you can see that. Looks promising. This is the spicy salami one, so hopefully not too spicy. Okay, so that is actually far better than I thought where this taste experiment was going to go. I was a little worried, bumping the temperature, exploding some ceramic. Tasting this pizza, you wouldn't know that we had any of those issues. This is really good. So I didn't really fully get to test the high heat dome potential after we had our ceramic incident. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a proper stone that's meant for this grid size as well as higher temperatures. I think we'll do this experiment again. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in seeing that. But from a taste perspective, this is spot on. This is really good wood-fired pizza. Anyways, I hope you liked today's video. If you did, please go ahead and smash that like button and hit subscribe to catch future videos. Until then, I'm James from Smoking Dad BBQ, signing off. Oh.